from the University of Waikato, Associate Professor Tom Roa from the Faculty of Maori and Indigenous Studies joins us. Good evening, sir. Thank you for giving us some time.
Oh, thank you for the call.
Oh, no, look, I appreciate it. For people who don't know how this all works, it was all very kind of not quite last minute, but I sent you an email and within maybe an hour we're chatting. So that's it's fabulous. I really genuinely appreciate you stopping your day for us to have a chat about this issue. This news, we call it this news. Well, there's kind of a news and there's a story that we want clarification on. So let's start with the flow on from yesterday's conversation. We were having a conversation yesterday based around Leader of the Opposition, Christopher Luxon's conversations with the media yesterday. One of the parts we didn't cover off yesterday, which I'd love to cover off with you because we didn't have the expertise or the perspective to be able to do it justice, so we didn't do it. Yesterday, Mr. Luxon was asked on TVNZ's Breakfast Show about working with the Māori Party when it came to post-election negotiations. And the question was asked, the Māori Party have made it very clear that they will only work with other parties who are treaty-centric, Te Tiriti-Centric parties. And the question I wanted to ask yesterday, which as I said, I want to get the right people to answer these questions because I'm not the right person, is to go, what does that even mean? And we like to do this thing, Tom, on this show where I go, talk to me like I'm 9 years old. I'd really like to understand and be educated as to what it means to be a Te Tiriti-centric party, because then that will let those of us who don't really understand the complexities of it know post-election, can National even work with the Māori Party? Can the Māori Party work with National if they're associated with ACT, etc., etc., etc.? So why don't we jump off the boat there and have a look at what that all means first?
Well, I think there's about 3 or 4 questions in in that question, Pat. But firstly, the 9-year-old. Some of my 12-year-old granddaughter, I think, is smarter than a whole lot of 20-year-olds.
Yeah, true.
She's 12 going on 13, and I think that some 30-year-olds could learn a lesson from that age group.
Yeah, fair.
Their minds are open, and I think that's the key to this, is how open is somebody that you want to share an idea with, how open is their mind to that idea? So if I start from that premise,
yep,
and go to the actually the last question that I heard, and that is, can the National Party work with the Māori Party, and vice versa?
Yeah.
Well, one day is a long time in politics.
It is.
And there will be all sorts of deals made after the next election. That there's nothing surer in this world than that there will be deals made of a political nature, of course, and there will always be this promise that is for the best of the country. Or is that a premise? So to come to the treaty-centric thought, what is Te Tiriti? And the present government came out with what they call the principles of the treaty, based on partnership, participation, and protection. Not in that order, of course.
Yep.
But the courts in the land and the Waitangi Tribunal, they do not adhere to these principles from the Crown, because they say that they're not actually part of Te Tiriti. They are somebody's interpretation today of what they believe is important in Te Tiriti. So the Waitangi Tribunal Health Panel came up with 5 principles, and I've turned their 5 principles into a little bit of a ditty in Māori, which are called te pau. Now, a pau is a ditty, is a song,
mm-hmm.
and it often is political. and it can be many different things, but it's sometimes composed on the spot, and always the pau carries a message. So if I can share that message with you and the viewers uh,
Please. Yeah.
at this time, Pat. Te pau is T-E-P-A-O. T-E-P-A-O. And the health panel in 2019 of the Waitangi Tribunal uh, argued, asserted that these should be the treaty principles, not with a capital P for principles, but just the underlying, if we might borrow that Te Tiriti-Centric guidelines in how we work with Te Tiriti or Waitangi. Now, so the T of TEPAO is tino rangatiratanga.
Mm-hmm.
So tino rangatiratanga is often translated and described as sovereignty. However, this concept doesn't seem to appear before 1835.
Right.
This concept of tino rangatiratanga in the Declaration of Independence, and then it features very strongly and very assertively in the Treaty o Waitangi, the Maori version. It's translated as sovereignty, but uh, we have to really also examine what sovereignty means,
Mm.
and the base of sovereignty actually is that everything belongs to the sovereign. Huh? It's sovereignty.
Yeah.
Well, that's possibly not our interpretation of sovereignty today. Sovereignty means self-rule, independence, autonomy. So that's what's asserted in Te Tiriti o Waitangi, that Māori retain their autonomy. Māori retain their self-governance. However, they give the Crown the permission to govern because British citizens were coming to Aotearoa and causing all sorts of havoc. They needed to be controlled. And if Maori controlled them, they would be treated much more harshly than if they were treated by their own.
Yeah.
So that was part of it wasn't the only thing, but it was part of this tino rangatiratanga in Te Tiriti, that Pākehā have their own ways. Māori have their own ways. It doesn't mean that we have to change for each other, but surely we must respond and respect and acknowledge our own ways. So this tino rangatiratanga isn't very strong in policy making, nor is it very strong in law making. It is becoming more important as we progress through our understandings of te tiriti.
Right.
Number one is te tino rangatiratanga, which respects that Māori retain their autonomy, their independence. That doesn't mean that we disobey the laws. It doesn't mean that we go about doing things as we want to do them, but we have a recognition that we have this right to be autonomous. So that's the very first principle, and that's the T of Te Pao. E is for equity. Equity is not equality. Equity is about a sharing of resources, which it was clear that the Maori chiefs of 1840 were keen to share their resources with this new group. I suggest possibly because they saw a wider market, and that the Pākehā was travelling the world.
Mm-hmm.
So to get to be part of that worldwide market, let's share our resources here and be able also, with working with Pākehā, share the resources and the produce of Aotearoa New Zealand moving out into the world. So this idea of equality is part of that, but equity, at the very base of equity, is a fairness.
Yeah.
So that in the principle of equity, the person or the group who has the least needs the most.
Yeah.
And the people
Tom, I was going to say, I'm sure you've seen this, but I love this imagery of the difference between equality and equity.
yes,
It's great, isn't it?
yes, yes, it's perfect.
Yeah.
You know? So equality, you all got the same chance,
Yeah. Yeah.
but equity, you make sure that everybody has the right opportunity and that is realized.
Yeah.
So that's the principle of equity. The P of Te Pau is partnership. Now, this partnership is not about a senior partner and a junior partner, which is probably the norm today. Partnership is where, again, equitably, we work together, and when some policy is set, it's not that the senior partner sets the policy and the junior partner has to fall into place. It's about co-creating, co-designing, co-owning those partnerships, those policies. So that's the P. The A is for active protection. Active protection. Often protection is almost a paternalistic. I'm looking after you, babe. You got to fall into line with how I want to look after you.
Right.
And when you have an unequal partnership, and when you don't recognize equity, and also that there is no tino rangatiratanga, that the other partner has their own autonomy, then this active protection is not really a protection.
Yeah.
There has to be an active way of making sure that the rights of the partner are not just recognized, but they're realized. So that's the A of Te Pau. O is for options. Now, in terms of options, in 1840, Te Tiriti guaranteed Maori the right of opting into this new governance system or opting out. And we have to remember that in 1840, Maori outnumbered and were the majority. They were going about their normal lives, many of them with no Pākehā in sight.
Mm-hmm.
Today we have the opposite. Right? But the Te Tiriti guaranteed that Maori could opt in or opt out
At any time as well?
at any time.
Right.
Now we have to be very clear within that, because of the first article. The Crown was given the right to govern, and so governing means making laws. Now we don't have a right to opt out of following the law.
Right.
Right? We have an option to opt into buying at Countdown or going to the local Foursquare, if we have the resources.
Yep.
Now, again, we come back to the equity. Too many Māori need more than others. And so for those who need more, they have no option. They just have to fall into place with what is given to them under the guise of active protection.
Mm.
So I think if I said this to my 12-year-old mokopuna, she could follow that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. It makes me think about things like, I'm pretty sure National has talked about getting rid of the Māori Health Authority. And when you talk about, some within Māori need more, that would seem to be contrary to a treaty-centric option for a party to adhere to. So it's, I
Absolutely.
mean, I guess looking at it from this far out, 18 months, although as you say, many deals are yet to be made. And sometimes even if you have to sign a deal that's not the best, it might be better to be on inside the big tent looking out than outside
Correct.
the tent looking in. I guess we'll have to wait and see. That's really interesting. I jotted all those things down as well. And I know you said tino rangatira as the first one, but I just wrote autonomy. I wrote autonomy,
Yep.
equity, partnership, active protection, and options. Those are the things I wrote
Yep.
down. So following those five things, that's a pretty good basis to think of what is something that is focused on or centered around the treaty when it comes to a partnership between two organizations, two parties, two people, whatever it is.
Correct.
Cool. That's awesome. Now, look, I mean, we've had you for longer than I said we have already, but I very much appreciate that, and I would love to get on to the second part of our conversation, which was today the petition to change New Zealand's Aotearoa has been presented to Parliament. I'm 1% confused on this because I think originally the Māori Party, the petition was to change the name, but I think what I've seen in the press today is to add the name. So we've been watching Jacinda Ardern over in the US. Every time she speaks publicly, she says Aotearoa New Zealand. Every single time. She hasn't had a law change to do that. She's, I guess, modelling it and saying this is what it's going to be. So just for clarity first, are we talking about the petition is going to be for a name change, i.e. New Zealand no longer exists as a name officially, Aotearoa becomes the number one name, or are we talking about it being added to, and what is your perspective on that?
I welcome the addition. I can imagine my father, who, along with 5 of his brothers and 2 brothers-in-law, went to the Second World War.
Yep.
And fought under the flag of New Zealand. I can imagine him, if I said we're going to change the flag, we're going to change New Zealand, he would not be happy. Because comrades of his fell fighting for that flag and fighting for New Zealand.
For sure.
Right? So I welcome the addition. And I really do welcome the conversations that are happening. And this morning on breakfast, some of the thoughts were a little way out, and some of them were based on an ignorance of the facts of the history. But nevertheless, the conversation is really, really important to have. And that, like many, I have tended now to say Aotearoa New Zealand, and it's becoming normal.
Yeah.
We actually don't need a law change
to say
one
something. One of the questions. Yeah.
We just do it normally.
Yeah.
And I should add in here, Pat, that the word Māori actually means normal.
Right. Oh, I didn't know that.
It's wai Māori is normal water untainted by anything added to it. Māori, I sometimes apologise to others when I say, so if you're not Māori, you can't be normal. Then I quickly add, well, actually, you might be super normal.
Hey, well, I guess that does raise the question, is this more of and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but is this more sort of a symbolic thing that the Māori Party are doing? Because I have to be honest, I live in Dunedin, and I often say Otipoti. It's just what I say. Yep. We greet everyone with kia ora. On all our emails, it's ngā mihi. It seems to be a part of what we're doing anyway. Yep. And I know that there'll be some pushback, and I actually haven't heard this yet, but I know it will come about quote unquote forced speech. You can't force me to say that, but it does feel, whether it's coming through attrition or whether it's coming through a change in culture, that I always talk about, I kind of joke because I'm of Irish ancestry. I'm almost pale blue. I'm so Caucasian, but it seems that all of us are just bringing those words on, especially, through the last, say, 40 years. And so, without any disrespect to the Māori Party, is this more symbolic than anything because it's sort of happening anyway? And you could never force someone to say Aotearoa New Zealand anyway, should they? I mean, there are some people out there who still call it Mount Egmont, for goodness sake. You can't force it, and it's happening naturally. So it feels a bit symbolic more than anything.
Well, symbols are actually extremely important.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
so the importance of the symbol. I tend to. Yeah, I mean, I have Irish ancestry as well, and I'm proud of that ancestry. And in that pride of that ancestry, there are all sorts of symbols like the shamrock, etc., etc., etc.
Yep.
St. Patrick's Day, etc., which we celebrate, but we don't need a law to do that.
Yeah.
Hey, so I think that you're correct in saying that we don't need a law, and it's happening anyway. It's becoming a normal part of our culture.
Yeah.
So I celebrate that,
Mm.
but I also celebrate the Maori Party bringing this to the front. You know, it seems to be happening, like you say, by attrition, and you will never ever force people who don't want to say Aotearoa to
Yeah.
say Aotearoa.
That's very
And
true.
that's just part of our culture.
Yep.
However, the symbolism of Aotearoa New Zealand and the uh, the importance of our bicultural society as a base of multiculture, right? So that um, recognizing this difference and acknowledging it, respecting it, is becoming a norm, and we're moving. Sometimes we move too fast for some people, and that causes an angst.
Yeah.
But that again is a part of what we normally do as people. We I mean, I think I sometimes use the example that I know in both my European ancestry as well as my Maori ancestry, some of my ancestors were cannibals. And in their time, that was totally acceptable to them
Mm-hmm.
in their culture. Now, goodness me, cannibalism, oh, don't go there,
Yeah.
right? But that's what happens naturally.
Yeah.
And we need to understand that, and we need to move with it, moving with the times.
Very true. From the Faculty of Maori and Indigenous Studies, University of Waikato, Associate Professor Tom Roa. Thanks, hey Tom. Thanks for joining us so much today. It's been an education, and I love just being able to sit at the feet of people who are wiser and know more and learn a little bit. And I feel like I've had that tonight. So I really do appreciate having you on, and we would love to have you on again in the future should the need arise.
Kia ora, Pat.